This week's Cowboy Up Podcast features Megan Wimberly from the Cowgirl Artists of America. Megan is more concerned about promoting other people's art over her art, and her art is amazing. We invite you to go along this ride with her and see what she has to offer and her friends have to offer. I'm sure this will be time well spent. Good morning, Mr. Russell True. How are you today?
I'm good. You know, it's August, but it's almost not August anymore. But it's been really a nice August. You know, sometimes we hear we're tired of summer. It's hot and it's got a bit of humidity by our standards. But it's really been nice.
It's been very pleasant. We've had enough rain. I cannot even believe every time my wife drives by White Stallion here, she remarks at how green everything is.
You know, we're kind of a winter ranch where winter rains really have more impact on us typically. We have more in the annual grass, less of the perennial, and which is not a good thing, but it just is.
Yeah.
And so the summer usually doesn't impact us as much, which is really the important rainy season for most of Arizona. But it's greened this place up like I haven't seen in a while.
It is beautiful, actually. So, I mean, I'm colorblind and I know that it's green, so that's a pretty good deal, right?
Yeah. Well, we've got Megan Wimberly here with us, and she's the founder of Cowgirl Artists of America. She grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She describes herself as a contemporary Western and wildlife artist. Grew up around horses and artists. Her mother was a horse trainer and an accomplished one, but also an artist. And so she is living her life blending those things, and horses and art. And of course, that's right square in our bullseye. So
absolutely.
Welcome, Megan. It's really nice to have you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, you know, we have you here because our podcast and personal friend of ours, Mark Bedore, longtime friend and kind of he's getting to be a pretty illustrious Westerner with all these awards he's winning from the Cowboy Hall of Fame there in Oklahoma City. And he's got his long-running television show, Today's Wild Wild West, and, books and articles in every magazine that we've heard of out here in the West. And so how do you know Mark?
Well, I got to talk to him he did an interview with me and one of our advisory board members, Morgan Booker. She's a cowboy bootmaker. And he interviewed us for an article for Cowboys and Indians. So we just kind of got to meet him randomly, and it was a real pleasure.
Wow. Yeah, that's if you've got someone like Mark Bedore interviewing you, I can argue you've done something right.
Well, we sure hope so. We work hard to try to do things right.
Yeah, I was introduced to Mark probably 8 months ago, and when you look at his body of work, it's pretty remarkable. I must say, and I know he's a good friend of Russell's. Now, have you visited him over in, where is he, at Omaha?
California.
Or was it Mark's in California?
Yeah. No, I haven't visited him. We just talked on the phone. So it was California, Oklahoma, and an Idaho phone call because Morgan's in Idaho.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, like I said, he specifically reached out to us, as a result of the interview, and said, "Hey, you need to talk to this lady. She's doing some pretty interesting stuff." So, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So, specifically, what he interviewed us about was about this show that we did called Women's Work. And Women's Work. So, let me backtrack a little bit for the inspiration for all of this, and that is that I went to a very, very beautiful Western art show back in 2018, and I knew that there weren't as many female Western artists being represented in a lot of the high-level shows, but it just hit me in a different way in this show, I think, because I'm so visual. And as I walked around and read the bios, I noticed tons and tons of talented men, but I started thinking, where are the women? And so I got a catalog and actually crunched the numbers. You know, the work was so beautiful. I thought maybe I am just dazed and confused and I'm misremembering, but it was actually only 9% female Western artists. And it really made me wonder, what is causing this big of a gap with representation in some of these shows? And so I wanted to do something about that, but it wasn't the time. And then in 2021, the pandemic hit and we all spent a lot more time at home. And so I was able to start something to help with that, which is Cowgirl Artists of America. And as the organization grew, we focus a lot on education and helping women to grow their careers and then giving them opportunities to show their work. And as that grew, a secondary idea that also came from that show it was for a solo show for myself called Women's Work, because the other thing I noticed looking at the Western art shows was that women were not present in the work itself very often. And when we do see them, they're often young or just a beautiful face, like a beautiful portrait, or they're doing something that we traditionally term as women's work. But those of us who grew up in the West know that, you know, our mothers and grandmothers were out there taking care of cattle and training horses, and they're really talented. And I wanted to share that story and celebrate that story because I have seen just so many talented women working in this field. And I think that those Western art shows, it's important for us to showcase a realistic portrayal. And when we're not telling the stories of women and all their contributions, we're really missing out on a chunk of what our history is and the vibrancy of our culture. And so I had this idea for women's work where I wanted to kind of take that notion of it's women's work and showcase women working on ranches. And as Cowgirl Artists of America grew, I realized that show was going to be so much better and so cool if I could share it with all these fabulous women I had been working with. And so I transitioned that show over to Cowgirl Artists of America, and we teamed up with the A.R. Mitchell Museum of Western Art in Trinidad, Colorado. And so we had 53 or 54 artists, and most of them were teamed up with women on working ranches, and they went out and learned from the women. Some of the artists were working on the ranches themselves, and then they gathered reference material and created work to celebrate and showcase what women are doing in the West. And then it also had a component for Indigenous women, because secondarily, we don't see a lot of Indigenous women's work showing up in Western art. And that can be complex. Sometimes they don't consider it Western art, but nevertheless, it's part of that story of the West. And so we wanted to provide a platform for Indigenous women to share the work and the stories of their culture from their firsthand accounts. And so it was a really exciting show and had a great turnout. And it was just so amazing to see all these women come together and for us to be able to not only promote the artists, but also the work that women are doing in the West.
Well, you know, I am blessed to be around some very, very powerful women. I mean, including Russell's wife, Laura, who is just, she's pretty accomplished. And, you know, one of the things that I enjoy about really embracing things of the West is the individual spirit. You know, you saw the pandemic go on, and where a lot of people shut down, you actually saw an opportunity and you seized that opportunity. And that's remarkable.
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of people did that. We tend to be I think we work ourselves hard. And I think a lot of us found a little extra time to squeeze in some of those things we have been dreaming about.
Well, I hope there's some good, most of the after effects of the virus, I don't think are particularly good.
No.
So I'm glad whenever something, and they did. It's like two sides of every single coin. There's good and there's bad, and so that's good. My theory on women in the West is that they've always been involved. They've been doing the stuff that now maybe they're getting credit for. I think the bigger difference is that they're getting a little more credit, a little more attention. I think they're certainly getting more opportunity, but they were fighting their way in there and doing this stuff a long, long time ago. But, they weren't the iconic cowboy and cowboys were created by Hollywood. in the sense that how we look at them and the terminology we use and all those things. And not that they didn't exist on their own, it's just it shifted the whole outlook. And I think that now the next generation of change is that we're acknowledging women more. Do you agree with that, or am I off base?
No, I really think that that's true. And of course, there have been some barriers. Even today, I was talking to one woman that was in the women's work show, and her husband works on ranches. He travels to different ranches to work, and he said that he's been on ranches where women are not allowed to work on the ranch unless they're married to one of the hands, which kind of blew me away that is a thing that's still happening. So there have been some literal barriers, but despite that, women have still found ways to pursue those passions and to contribute in ways that are maybe not in the traditional sense. And I never want to diminish the traditional work of women, because that is so incredibly valuable and important. But I think the astounding thing is that often women are doing that thing that's traditionally considered their role while also being fabulous horse trainers and out there mending fences and branding cattle. Right. And so, I just think bringing awareness and telling that story, it doesn't take away from the cowboys and that, but it adds to the reality of what the West is. And like you said, we have this kind of preconceived notion of what
horses
look like, and it's a little different than what Hollywood has presented it.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm not a Hollywood prototype, that's for sure.
He's got dashing good looks. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah. So I think that I can speak to the barriers specifically. When I was a kid, and not that I was some card-carrying women's rights advocate, but the guy who taught us more about dude ranching than probably anybody else single-handedly, Clyde Davis, our head wrangler and foreman and just all around larger-than-life character, he wouldn't hire women wranglers. And back, that was probably when I was 15 to 19, and it bothered me because some of them I thought, that we ran into could have done the job. Of course, as things change, we probably get 2 out of 3 wrangler applicants are women today. It's a significant majority. It might even be 3 out of 4. And
wow.
Yeah, and so we've got some female wranglers here right now that my wife's looking for a new wrangler, and they're saying, could you try and find a man? Because we really like when they load the hay. And I don't think there's any other motivation. They just want another guy to push those 120-pound bales up the stack. But again, the proportion. The other thing is, I'll just make another, just observational but accurate. The women are much farther out ahead. So if we're looking at hiring a few months ahead, 9 out of 10 applicants will be women. And wow. When you get down to the last 3 weeks and all of a sudden the males have figured out their job's about to end because the season's over, they're all in a panic to get their next job, but they hadn't thought about it until the last 2 or 3 weeks. And so you can guarantee you can hire some men at the last minute.
I like it.
It's just reality, and it just is how it is. Well, talk about you talk about community and how do you see that playing into what you're doing? And then we'll take a break.
Yeah, community, I think, is the secret sauce that makes everything just beautiful. Community as humans, we are made for community, and a community that's thriving and supportive of its members is a really beautiful thing. And so, and I guess I'm saying that more in the terms of like the small art community, but in the wider picture too, and so we have like these small communities that maybe is Western art, and then we have this bigger community that's the Western culture, and beyond that, our states and our towns and all of that stuff. And I think the thing that I've learned the most in running Cowgirl Artists of America is that community is where we're really able to get in and support people and help them to grow. And then B, get to help spread the message for these artists to, share their work. And so it takes both sides. And I think one of the really cool things that I'm seeing in these communities that are popping up that are focused around helping women to get their footing in different fields. So you've got like Art of the Cowgirl, our organization. Every time that I've been in a women's group, that's a community of women artists, they always say, every single time without fail, somebody says, all ships rise together. And I think that the way women are doing community is a little different than it has been traditionally done in some groups, because the arts specifically have been a little secretive from time to time. And you really had to get in with a mentor, and, people didn't want to let you know how to do things. It was really competitive. And women are so great about bringing people in and supporting each other. And it's breaking down some barriers of competition and really focused on, hey, when you do good, I do good. When you're contributing to our community, our whole community is getting an impact from this. And so community really you can't forget about your community. It's just so valuable every which way you look at it.
Well, I spent quite a bit of time on your website, and one of the things that occurred to me is the women artists are not there to compete with one another. They're there to support and help one another and share some of their secrets. Yeah,
for sure. And we see that in our group. People are just so generous about, we literally have shared our contracts, they're like, hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you do? And you'll have people come in and say, this is literally what I do. And I'll share my template with you if you want it.
Okay. Well, Megan, we're going to go, we got to take a break, go around the corner, and we'll be back with you momentarily. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Megan. Here we go with another great show, the Cowboy Up Podcast. My name is Stan Houston, Stan the Radio Man. It's been my privilege and my pleasure to serve as kind of the creator, founder, and the one who has the privilege and the opportunity of actually putting this program together for you as a part of my work with What It Takes Radio and what we call the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network. Now, that's a new coming together of a number of us who really love what the Cowboy Up Podcast is all about. It's about the Western way of life, about the traditions of the cowboy, those good things that truly in many ways made our country and our living experience great. It was tough. It was rugged. It was responsible. It was dealing with bad things and doing good things. And it has been part of the stories we tell. Well, what we want to do is continue to grow more and more of you into the storytellers. See, we're going to have a number of other people who are going to join us and put their podcast together. We're having one coming in which will be very much involved with the celebration of Route 66, which is taking place with the centennial coming up in the next year, and another adventure series with Tombstone. And there are a number of others that we're planning to bring in as part of the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network. And perhaps you have an idea. Maybe you know someone who does, that this would be the opportunity for them to tell their story, show a little bit of their wisdom, insight, and truth, how they can share good music, good stories, good information, helping to not only inform us and educate us, but perhaps even to give us a touch of entertainment from time to time. So that's what we are all about. So I would be grateful if you would reach out to me and tell me how I can help you get you and your story and your Western way of life on the radio. Reach out to Stan, S-T-A-N, at witradio.net. That's Stan at witradio.net. And now back to Cowboy Up.
Okay, and we're back with Megan. Okay, Megan, now I know there's, promotion is a big deal in the art world because, you can do the best art in the world, but if nobody finds out about it, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. And I know you've got some events happening right now in Colorado, and we're going to talk about an event that's coming up later towards the end of what we're doing today. But you've got a big show going on in Colorado right now, don't you?
We do. The Women's Work Show opened at the beginning of August, but it actually runs through the end of September. So that show I was talking about that I took from a solo show idea to share with CGA, that show is the first year of many, is currently on display at the A.R. Mitchell Museum of Western Art in Trinidad, Colorado.
Okay.
And it is a super cool museum with a ton of history, and everybody up there is just so delightful.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that a museum you've been to, Russ?
No. Tell us the name again, and then give us where Trinidad is related to a big city such as Denver.
Yeah. So it's the A.R. Mitchell Museum of Western Art. So A.R. Mitchell was a famous Western illustrator, and so the museum is in Trinidad, which is, if you know where Pueblo is, it's a couple hours south of Pueblo. So several hours. I think it's kind of almost directly south of Denver, if I am remembering the map correctly.
I was born in Denver, but my geography on Colorado is a bit weak. So yeah, I know Trinidad, and so tell us again the name of because people may want to get there. If a lot of people live in Colorado, tell us the name of the museum again.
Yeah, it's the A.R. Mitchell Museum of Western Art.
Perfect.
Excellent. Okay. So what are some of the ways that people can support some of the artists you're working with?
Yeah, so going to the shows or viewing them online and buying work is one of the biggest things. And the really cool thing about when you buy work from an artist is that you are literally supporting them directly, and you are supporting the continuation of their work. So a lot of times, you might go to a big store and buy something and you don't even really know how that money is getting divided up. But when you purchase art, you are directly impacting somebody's life and their family's life, which is really cool. The other thing you can do, because some people can't afford art, it's not in their budget right now, but sharing people's work on social media, helping them to get their name out there is an invaluable thing. So if you are a fan of an artist, make it a habit to share their work and talk about them, because that is such a valuable thing for artists.
Now, is that something you're heavily involved in? Is it just Facebook, or is it Instagram, or what do you do on that?
Yeah, so with Cowgirl Artists of America, right now we have a post scheduled to go out for every piece of work that's in the Women's Work Show. We often, when we do any promotions for, say, our membership, we'll use our artists' work and we'll credit them and tag to their account, things like that. And then the shows themselves also provide that promotion, because people are able to go and see the work in person as well. And often the shows are getting featured in magazines too. So there's multiple levels of promotion for artists, for sure.
Well, it's the era, right, where I think, you're right in the bullseye. I mean, people are waking up to the idea that, there are two genders, and sometimes we haven't paid a lot of attention to one of them, and it might be a good idea. So you mentioned indigenous female artists. Are they liking what you're doing? Are they participating?
Yeah, so I can't speak for everybody for sure, but we do try to have Indigenous women on our boards and on our curatorial committees. For women's work, we specifically did a lot of outreach for Indigenous women, so they would know that, hey, this, we know this is called Cowgirls and it's Western art, but this is for you. And then I think some of that takes time to just build that camaraderie and the trust. And so in women's work, we had, I think it was 6 Indigenous women, and there was a sculptor, a painter, Beverly Bear King Moran. She made a beaded horse mask that's just, it blows my mind. It's so beautiful. And so we had a good variety, but we would love to get more Indigenous women involved so that we can promote their work as well. And even if it's not considered Western art in their eyes, that is fine with us because, like I said before, that is part of the story of the American West. And we want to make sure that some of these stories are coming from firsthand accounts, not always just being told by somebody who isn't a part of the culture.
Well, and I think, as a person, I really enjoy art. I'm not, my Aunt Jean, I think really, and we had a famous artist in our family, Alan T. True, but she really was an expert. I think she really instilled in her kids. My cousins are all, they're knowledgeable and they're patrons and they support it. And so I've, gained a far greater appreciation than I once had. But I think the indigenous stuff is interesting because it's different, and it would broaden any show just because, as you just described, a intricately beaded horse mask, and that's probably not going to come out of a different group of folks than those artists. So I think it would broaden. It's going to make all those shows better if they participate.
And anytime you get someone indigenous involved, they just see things through a completely different lens.
Yeah, there can be such a different cultural perspective, a different lens, different traditions. And so it really does provide value. And I mean, the skills and the talents of these women are just, it really is astounding. And we're really missing out on something when we aren't providing space to include that sort of work, I think.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of a question popped into my head. Cowgirl Artists of America, is it a trade organization? Is it membership due driven, or is it a 501c3? What is it?
Yeah, so it's set up as a social entrepreneurship, which is only a legal standing in some states. Not all states recognize social entrepreneurship, but essentially it's set up as a business, but its success is not just measured through bringing money in, but its success is in meeting its mission. And so setting it up that way has allowed us to be a little bit more flexible in the beginning, getting started with how fast we can move things along. And so it's been really beneficial to us. It is set up like an organization in that you can join to become a member. And the way we kind of addressed several conflicting problems, which was kind of complex, but you have artists that are top tier, and they need something that provides something that they can add to their resume and be proud of. And that's like a top tier thing. And then you also have artists who are just getting started, and many art organizations will jury in artists. So it's only juried, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in our mind, since we're so focused on education and helping women build their careers, we want to start at the ground up. So we have multiple levels of membership. So our first level, which is just basic membership, is not juried. Anybody can join that. But then in order to step up to the next level, you have to complete a certain set of educational resources that are in our member space. And then after you've done that, you can apply for the juried tiers. And our highest tier is signature member, and it is incredibly hard to get into. And so that when women, because like I said, we have women who are just getting started on their art career, and we have women who are world renowned. And so we want to offer something to everybody.
Excellent.
So, how many signature members do you know are there?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say there's around 50-ish, I think. And then we have around 350 members.
It was actually pretty impressive on the website. It really was.
Right.
Thank you. Well, and that's, with our signature members, they get their work showcased on the website, on our members page. And part of the reason for that is because this doesn't happen often, but I have heard multiple people say that women aren't seen in these big shows as much because they're not as good. And that's absolutely not true.
No.
And so we want it to be a thing where if anybody does think that, they can go and look at that signature member page and they'll know that it's not true. And so that has always been really important to us, that this highest level membership is something that is an example of the high quality work that women are doing. Yes, it is earned.
So,
right.
So is there an artist or artists, male or female, that you drew inspiration from as you started?
That's really an interesting question. I think that artists are kind of inspired by everything they see. There's never been an instance where I've seen an artist and thought, I want to emulate them. It's more like I might see something, like, oh, I really appreciate how they used those two colors together, or, oh, that composition is really cool. And so, inspiration I think the biggest thing that inspires me is just to see how hardworking artists are, and it makes me want to work harder and get better and do more things.
Good friend of ours is Diana Medeiros, pretty famous in Southern Arizona, female artist, and she once told me, because she has her own gallery, and she told me once that one of the reasons she chose to do it that way, which is a challenge, and she really had to work hard to do it. And fortunately for her, she's not just a good artist, she's a clever marketer. But she said having her own gallery allowed her the freedom to, in her case, she does painting, to paint different styles, because if you're shown through a gallery, you're generally limited. The gallery's going to say, no, I don't want to see your modern art, thank you very much. You put that in your garage somewhere. We want to see your generally accepted, demanded style. How do you describe your style?
So I say it's contemporary Western and wildlife art, but it's very bold, colorful work. It typically focuses in really close on an animal or a person with a horse, and it showcases that connection with the animals, or the story in that animal's life that's capturing this moment. And then I enhance the narrative qualities through the colors that I use. So to make it more moody or more colorful, things like that. A lot of people who paint with really bright colors, often go a little bit more towards abstraction. And it's really important for me to keep the anatomical correctness and to bring in the texture. So even though I'm painting with I've got blues and purples, you're still going to see the texture on the bighorn's horns. You're still going to see that Velcro strap on the boots on the horse. And so it's kind of a unique combination of realism, but really bold colors.
Nice.
And what kind of paint?
Acrylic. Yeah, I started painting with oil, and I have a tendency to get migraines, and discovered that the smell did not work well for me. So I was kind of forced into acrylic, and I think different paints have different pros and cons, but I appreciate that acrylic because it dries so fast. It has forced me to become very good at mixing color, which is important for what I'm doing.
Coincidentally, my great uncle painted in oil at turn of the century, late 1800s through the 40s, and he discovered late in life that he had a fairly severe allergy to turpentine, and that all these syndromes that he was suffering were from his job.
Oh my goodness!
So you've got a show coming up in Tubac. I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
that's exciting. So because that's literally around the corner from White Stallion.
It is super close, and Tubac is such a unique town. I tell everyone it's like scooping up the galleries from Santa Fe and just sticking them in the desert with a couple restaurants, which is really cool. But it's at the Tubac Center for the Arts, and it is called Land of Legends. And the show is for photographers and makers of traditional cowboy gear. So we've got a variety of photographers, and then we've also got somebody who's making a hat and somebody who's making chaps, and we've got a bronc belt and rawhide braided horse reins. And so it's going to be really cool to see those two things together in that facility, which is really a beautiful gallery.
When is that?
It opens September 20th. So opening night is September 20th, and then it runs through, I believe it's November 10th.
Nice. Well, I also like the fact that you've been open-minded enough to allow your art to move off of the canvas into other areas.
Yeah, at first I really focused with CGA on the fine art because that's the background I came from, but I had so many women coming and saying, like, we're in the same spot as silversmiths. Like, we need this support too. And so it was a little bit out of my zone of knowledge, but so much of the business side of things is the same. And so, we just try to have really good people on our advisory board. Lisa Sorrell, she is like one of the best cowboy boot makers in the world, is on our advisory board. And so we have these great people that we can say, hey, like, what are your thoughts about this? Can you help us with jurying the show? And that's a really valuable asset to our team.
Well, I'm going to plug Tubac. You just compared it to Santa Fe, and Santa Fe has that unmatched history, and people forget it's older than most of the Northeast. I mean, in fact, I guess it's older than all of the Northeast, but unless you talk about Vikings or something. But man, that's a crowded place, Santa Fe, and Tubac is so accessible, and it has so much to offer, and it has 3 of my favorite spots in southern Arizona. I always say my blood pressure drops as soon as I turn on to I-19. And not that I have a blood pressure problem, but, Tubac Country Club, what a fantastic place. Tumacacori Mission, which is just down the road, a Keno mission that has been restored, but not all the way. So you get a sense of its era. And, the Tumacacori Bar, which is right across from the Tumacacori Mission. So, if anybody's thinking, hey, maybe, this is something to come in and see, stay at the country club or Tubac Ranch. It's an historic dude ranch, one of my favorite places too. Used to be called Kenyon Ranch, Kenyon, or Tubac Ranch, same place. And go see some of the fun stuff down there, plus this great show, which is September 20th to November 10th.
Yeah, and the September 20th, we'll have several artists there. So you can actually come to the opening reception, and the artists will be there. I'll be down there. And so it's going to be a really good time. And I agree. Tubac is it's really literally a little gem. The first time I went to it, I was like, what in the world? How did I not know about this? It's just an incredible little space. Yeah.
So if we show up there on the 20th, we will have the opportunity to meet you.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That's pretty cool. Okay. So we're coming to the end of our time here, Megan. What do you want us to know? How do you want our listeners to look you up? Because I know you've got a website. Can you talk about that, please?
For sure. So there's 2 options. For Cowgirl Artists of America, it's cowgirlartistsofamerica.org, and we are on all of the social media things, although I don't really use TikTok, but we are on there. And then for my personal art, it's Megan Wimberly, and that's WIMBERLEY. People often forget the E, .com, and I am also on all of the social media sites under the same name.
Okay, great. So, Megan, I really appreciate you taking the time today because I know you're extremely busy. You've got a show you're getting ready to prepare for that you're preparing for. I know you're extremely busy. So I really appreciate you taking the time today with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's been delightful chatting with y'all.
Well, we're going to just reiterate cowgirlartistsofamerica.org, O-R-G. Always remember when it's O-R-G. And then Megan Wimberly, which is WIMBERLEY.com.
Correct.
And there's just the letters strung together.com, right?
Yep. Yeah. And if you search either thing in Google, they'll both come up.
Right. Exactly. Of course. All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Take care. We've got some great things coming up here at White Stallion. One of our favorite times of the year is when we put together special events for special people, and we've got 3 coming up between now and just after the first of the year. We've got Yoga on Horses with Kathy Woods. We've got Unbridled, and we've got Cactus Cowgirls. You can find more information about each one of those on our website, whitestallion.com. And they're just remarkably enjoyable events. People repeat, they come back for those, and it's something that we just love to host. We'd love to see you join us. Look at whitestallion.com.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and thank you for being with us, and we hope you'll join us again. Hey, remember, this is the Cowboy Up Podcast, and we're grateful when you reach out and tell other people about us. We'd love to hear from you. The Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. The Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. Tell us how we can do a better job. Perhaps suggest some people who might be great to have on the program, and many of you might say, I think I could be on the program. Well, we'd love to hear from you. Once again, the Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. And that truly is the end of the story. However, we always now try to put together a little music to enhance us and refresh us and to inspire us about the cowboy western way of life. And today, Jim Jones joins us again with another one of his great songs. Here we go as we go out.
Old horses and old men riding the changes that blow on the wind, wishing they could do it all over again. Old horses and old men, dreaming of golden days from the past, a proud way of life that just couldn't last. They gave their all time and again. Old horses and old men, old horses, old men, set in their ways, remembering the thrill of those bygone days. Old horses, old men, ride out again, raring to start, but nearing the end. Oh, the rowdy and rambling tales as they could spin. Old horses and old men. They saddle up before daylight, a little bit stiff, but still full of fight. They come riding home around twilight. Old horses and old men. Time's moving on, they can't deny that. Life is a-changin', but they live in the past. Heroes with saddles and cowboy hats. Old horses and old men. Old horses, old men, set in their ways, remembering the thrill of those bygone days. Old horses, old men, ride out again, raring to start, but nearing the end. Oh, the rowdy and rambling tales they could spin. Old horses and old men. And the old horse and old man, they slowly wait. They're watching from over the top of the gate. A lifetime's gone by, now this is their fate. Old horses and old men. Remembering the old days, the things that they've seen. Even old horses and old men can dream of a time when proud men and horses were king. Old horses and old men. Old horses, old men, saddle up once more, biding their time, but they're ready for war. Old horses, old men, ride out again. They're raring to start, but they're nearing the end.